buckle up, get ready, and this is a video game podcast, and let's do this, boys. Speaking of games that you guys need to play, Resident Evil 2, you guys need to play. But this past week, and I did this kind of on purpose, is I wanted to play Resident Evil 2 and then compare it to Resident Evil 3. I have done that.
How many pairs of pants did you go through, Tim? Like how many times did you shit yourself out of fear?
3 times. Actually,
Not bad.
The game, the first time where Mr. X appeared in Resident Evil 2 was hilarious.
Jesus Christ!
Where like the main character is like, Jesus Christ. and I'm playing on assisted mode because I want to beat the game fast. Mr. X puts up like the thing and like starts walking towards you, and because I'm playing like on easy mode, I just had a shotgun in my hand. I just like shot him in the face and he dropped immediately. And I just like, it was more of like a jump scare. I was like, oh my God. And then like I just walked around him and just like continued with the game. But
nice.
Anyway, so Resident Evil 3, I would say, is far less scary than Resident Evil 2. I think the thing that made Resident Evil 2 scary was the fact that Mr. X is always chasing you. Changing you. But I think the reason... I think Resident Evil 3 plays more like an action game. So if we're going to kind of dive into it, Resident Evil 3 came out a couple weeks ago. It has kind of two things going for it. It has Resident Evil Resistance, which is its online component, as well as Resident Evil 3. However, most media outlets would agree that the bulk of the reason why you're buying the game is because of the Resident Evil 3 story mode. So I sat down, I played it. Now, the major common consensus is that the game is fairly short for the price tag. And I kind of got to agree with that. So I played the game on assisted because I kind of want to beat it fast. So I got to give it fair shake in that I would probably add on, give or take, an hour of extra time to beat it in the normal difficulty, maybe a little more. But I beat the game in 3 hours and 32 minutes on assisted mode. And a lot of that game is in cutscenes, so I would assume that in all reality, it probably would have taken me a little over 4 hours to beat the game.
So, like, of gameplay time, you're probably only playing, like, an hour and a half, 2 hours, and an hour cutscene?
I would say, like, in gameplay time, you're probably playing, like, around, like, 3 hours, but I also, like, I think the thing is it is a good game. Like, what is there is really good. But it's up to you to decide, like, if that 3 hours for $60 is worth it. And, like, or 3.5, let's say 4 hours. So if it's $4 for, $60, that's, like $15 for an hour of game, every hour of gameplay. And in all honesty, like, yes, you can go back, you can play the campaign again. But I think the difference between this game as well as comparing to RE2, which came out last year, is RE2, the campaign, took me on the same difficulty mode 6 hours to beat. So the game is roughly a little less than half as long, a little less than half as long, or a little more than half as long. Sorry, and in RE2 there's also 2 different campaigns. So essentially, the game is a quarter of the length of Resident Evil 2. And it's still the same amount And on top of that, they've added like an online component, which is great in hindsight. But
do you think that the online mode was intended to be kind of like a Friday the 13th kind of game, where they were hoping that people would stick around and play that?
Yeah.
More?
So for those that haven't played it, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's a very much a Friday the 13th kind of game where you have one person kind of chasing you as well as 4 people trying to get out of there. And it is from what I didn't really get a chance to play it because I wanted to focus more on the story mode. So from what I gather, it's competent, but it's not like amazing. I mean, the reason why you play this is because of the main campaign. I think that the majority of fans would agree with me in saying that I think that if they had nixed the multiplayer mode and added, another campaign or the campaign from Carlos's perspective, then that would have been much more adequate. But I think we also got to look at the positives of the campaign. I think the game was absolutely stunningly gorgeous. I think if you played Resident Evil 2, it is a great companion piece. And I think the story has these believable characters that you really like to see. And you I get to seeing it from a different perspective, like Leon's story from a different perspective in Carlos when he goes to the police station, seeing, the different perspective from Jill when she sees different things and how she reacts to everything. That is really cool. And also, Nemesis is a scary motherfucker. Like, that guy, like, when he's chasing you, it is... I don't care what anybody says, like, online. This is my personal experience. When he was chasing me versus Mr. X, he was far scarier because he could sprint. So, like, for instance, like you'd be like, oh my god, I'm almost to the exit, and you'd be like going up to the door, and then all of a sudden he just punch you, and he'd like run up behind you and punch you in the back of the head. Like, you just like fly into the door. So I also dig a lot of the references, the Easter eggs they had. They had like Mega Man Easter eggs, they had Street Fighter Easter eggs. That was really cool stuff.
How about Monster Hunter?
Yeah, there was some Monster Hunter Easter eggs. Lot less, I think.
Good.
I think the thing with this game was that there was much more action and less puzzle solving than there was in Resident Evil 2. And I think Resident Evil 2 already had a fair amount of action and fair amount of puzzle solving. So this seemed like a Call of Duty Resident Evil campaign. So that's kind of my final take on it. It's a good game for the 3 hours. But, So
someone that hasn't played either game, RE2 or RE3, just play RE2.
Just play. Here's the thing. If at my end result will say this. If you've never played Resident Evil before, check out Resident Evil 4, check out Resident Evil 2 Remastered, and check out Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. If you really, really like, and don't play Resident Evil 7 with the VR mask. You're just terrorizing yourself. Now, if you...
That was fun.
Yeah.
I actually had fun with that.
Oh, yeah, fun times.
Now, if you like Resident Evil 2, I would say definitely play Resident Evil 3 with the contingency that, you know that this is 3 hours and you should probably wait for a discount of maybe to be like $30. I think that's like a decent price to ask for this game.
It'll be 20 in a year, guaranteed.
Yeah, so like if
$20 in a year.
Yeah, so if you, and that's kind of where I stand. Like if you go and pick up this game for $20, it is a great companion piece to RE2. RE2 was worth the $60. I can't say this game is worth the $60 for that. I hate to say it, but I would probably give RE3 maybe like a, I'll give it a 6.8.
Be fair.
6.8 out of 10. Great game.
That's fair.
You know what? Good game
Solid.
for while it lasted, but it just was way too short, So we are a weekly podcast that can be found on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Podcast One, wherever you name it. And
I think you're making shit up
we
now.
will be in your ear hole.
Podcast
You
one.
almost got through it, Tim. You almost got through it.